Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Time and Place, the Christian conversation show where we talk about everything you don't have time to bring up in Sunday school. I'm Solomon, this is Julian, and
Yo,
today we're talking about heroes, murder, and vigilantism.
and
So,
isn't that the time?
yeah, so we've got two cases that are kind of in the news lately about Daniel Penny and Luigi Mangione, straight from The Sopranos. Uh, to to murder a CEO in the streets of New York. So Daniel Penny, which is kind of a recap if someone's not paying attention at all to the news. I think last year, earlier this year or something, was on a subway in New York, and he saw another guy named Jordan Neely who was out of his mind, crazy, screaming at the passengers, threatening them, being very violent and saying things like, I don't care if I die. I don't care if I go to prison for the rest of my life. Someone's going to die today. I mean, they were terrified. And Daniel Penny is a Marine or a former Marine, or I guess they say you're always a Marine. Put him in a submission hold, kind of around the back and got him down just to subdue the guy. And he was breathing the entire time and struggling the entire time. So I stayed on him for so long. He could have choked him out. It wasn't a chokehold. That's something that the news has been getting wrong all over and over again, maybe on purpose. Is a chokehold. It's not a chokehold. A chokehold he would have been out in 5 seconds. This is a submission hold. He was just holding him, restraining him. He could have choked him out and made him pass out, and he didn't. So he's holding him there till the cops come, like 12 minutes later or something like that. Jordan Neely was in such a hysterical state at that point and probably on drugs, and he died. He just went into some kind of cardiac arrest and just died. So then Daniel Penny got, brought up on charges of manslaughter or negligence and things like that. Went through his whole trial. Finally acquitted. The case was dismissed, and he's free. And a lot of people are happy about that. A lot of people are not happy about that. And that just happened a few days ago. And then the other case, more recently, is of Luigi Mangione, 20-something-year-old rich kid who shot the CEO of United Healthcare in the back in cold blood in New York while the CEO was at some conference or something, and just ran away. And and then yeah, so those are the two cases. He got caught. Now he's arrested and kind of being paraded around in handcuffs. I don't know why he's getting this like camera time, but yeah. So those are the two cases, and the public's response to these two cases has been wild, has been really crazy, because they're calling Daniel Penny a murderer, bad guy, terrible person, and they're calling Luigi Mangione a hero and a Robin Hood or a Bonnie and
Yeah,
Clyde or whatever. And there's all this like deranged hero worship, and it's just so messed up. And it's like these two cases are brought perfectly to contrast how terrible our moral compass has gone astray.
yeah,
Um,
they're opposites in almost every way too. Because like the Daniel Penny thing was like, well, somebody's got to do something, and he was the only one that wanted to do anything about it. He was reluctantly he got stuck in this position, and Mangione, when they caught him, all he had on him was a gun, monopoly money, and his manifesto.
and a note
And
that says, I did it.
yeah, yeah. So he wanted to be a folk. Like this was his plan: do the thing, get caught, become a folk hero, an icon, and then inspire people. I guess
Yeah, and then he's getting arrested, and there's cameras, and he starts yelling out something to
yelling
the
stuff.
cameras. He kind of seems to want a lot of attention. Where I
Yep.
didn't even heard Daniel Penny speak until his case was acquitted, uh, or his case was dismissed. So very different, very different, and very different reactions. And that's what's really kind of throwing us for, or making our heads spin, is this reaction of the court of public opinion. Is the verdict is Daniel Penny's a monster and he's a terrible person and racist, because Jordan Neely, the guy who died on the subway, is black. So of course that immediately puts a racial tinge to it.
Oh, for sure.
Uh,
This was framed as like George Floyd too.
right.
That was the
And
framing immediately.
which also had the charge of racism. Which
Right.
it, it, it it, it's a classic like begs the question, right? Where a white guy kills a black guy, and people people point and say racist. The accusation of racism is applied to it. It's a hate crime, right?
Right.
Okay, you ask for evidence of that this murder or this killing or this death was motivated by race, and the answer is, well, he's black. It's like, well, a white guy killed a black guy. It's like, yeah, but how do you know it was driven by race? How do you know that he targeted him or intentionally did these things to him because he was black? It's like, well, because he's white and he's black. And it's like, that's the answer. That's
Yeah.
literally the only evidence, quote unquote, evidence that's presented in these cases of racism being a factor in these deaths is the guy who's alive is white and the guy who's dead is black. So there's your proof. That's racist. Like, no, that's the question. That raises the question. Was this motivated by race? And you're just going back to the scenario, the fact of the scenario of the person is white and the person is black, and
I mean, that's
it's a
the
circle.
given though. That's the foundational truth of like modern politics is white people are racist, black people are oppressed. So any
Right.
situation involving them is automatically racist. There's
Right.
no other situation that it can be. It's racist.
And intentionally left, it's been intentionally left vague for so long and in so many cases that people don't even know to look for evidence. People, I think, literally think the result is the evidence,
Mm,
and the outcome is the evidence. Dead black person, the white guy's alive, racist. It's like, yeah,
right.
but how do you know that he was racist towards black people? And that's
And
what
then you're
like
racist for
all these
asking how do
deaths.
you know that?
Right. You even question it. It's just, and it's like the idea of systemic racism is intentionally left vague because if you start asking, well, where's the racist policy? Where's the racist judge? Where's the racist cop? Where's the racist law or whatever? And it's like, well, it's the system. It's the system. And it's like, well, that's convenient because you can't, but that's the point too, is that they want to just dismantle the entire system,
Right.
and the whole system is bad, so it just all has to go. But you can't pinpoint or identify one racist judge, one racist anything. It's the system, so it's intentionally left vague. So when you get into situations like this, you start asking for specific evidence or proof of a racist motive. They don't know what you're talking about. It's just, look, it just happened, so there it is. That's your proof. It's like, no, that's the question.
Well,
you know
that's the original sin. The modern original sin is slavery. So everything is racist because of that. So that's the ultimate flaw in America. So everything has to be racist. That's the
yeah,
rewriting of history where it used to be like, well, America was founded when Columbus landed in the West Indies. That's when they discovered America. Or when the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. That's when America was founded. And it's the rewriting like, no, it's 1619 when the first slaves were brought to the colonies. That's when America was founded. That's the foundation of America. That's
right.
the beginning of everything. So
So that's the framing of Daniel Penny's case in that
right.
situation. And Luigi Mangione, let's talk a little bit about
Oh
him.
boy.
So do you know like more like much about him and his kind of background and the whole story of
So
what's been reported, I guess, even so far?
it's all kind of still in the fog. There's a lot of like, was that even him? Was he? There's a lot of like stuff going on around him. But the big thing is that
Well, he says
he
it was. So
yeah. Well, that's what we're going with now. He says it was. He was wearing the outfit. They caught him. So he's charged right now federally. But the big thing that everybody points to is he had what seemed to be a debilitating back injury. He had some kind of back issue where he had a spinal fusion, and then he had been injured surfing, and that made it worse.
mm,
And he was at the point where he was starting to complain about numbness. So he was starting to have this kind of angst about like going paralyzed, which
mm,
when you're his age, you're in college, you're a guy in college, that's terrifying. That's terrifying at any age, but to be in your 20s and think I'm going to lose all my feeling, that's horrible.
yeah.
So he has that going on. And apparently his mother had some kind of illness too, and they were having issues with United Healthcare, denying claims. And so his
Really?
solution, yeah, that's the story, is that his
They
mom had
were
some kind of
rich.
issue too.
See, that's what. So, because I heard a little bit about this guy too. He grew up. His parents owned some companies. He's super rich. Went to Penn State or something. Uh, you know, valedictorian of his high school, good private high school or whatever. Just the very rich, very privileged kid, and so I that's the first I've heard of any sort of like him having any sort of health. I know he had the back thing,
Yeah.
and he was. I didn't know that he would be denied health insurance. He seems like a person. He didn't say that in his manifesto. He didn't say I was personally denied health insurance or something. He just, yeah, he just had a lot of back pain and there was a lot of issues and he didn't see any answers.
Well,
But
his
they
whole
did give,
thing,
yeah,
he for me, he gives me a vibe kind of like Ted Kaczynski.
yeah, he loves
'Cause
Ted Kaczynski. He like really admired him and like
and he had
read his
these
books.
like screeds that he wrote about modern architecture, where Kaczynski's whole thing was industrial revolution and how it was ruining nature. His was like how modern architecture is ruining nature, and that he had that
Isn't that what you
kindredness where he
say?
kind of looked up to him.
Isn't that what you
What's
say?
that? No.
Aren't you against
I haven't
modern
shot.
architecture?
Hey, I was not in New
Hey, where
York
were you?
at the.
Yeah. Do you have any plans? The CEO convention's coming up.
He seems to just be like a guy with a grudge, and this was his. In the same way that Kaczynski was like he cloaked his crimes behind this idea of being this radical environmentalist, and in reality, he was just like a guy with problems who was angry at people and decided to take it out on people. That kind of seems like the vibe I'm getting from Mangione too. Is he was just a kid dealt a bad hand. He was angry about the way things were, and this was the way he decided to handle it.
Yeah, I also saw that his Goodreads list, his books that he had been reading or whatever, had been released, and there was a book about Ted Kaczynski, which he mentioned in his manifesto as like, hey, he has some good points, or something
Mhm.
like that, and uh, also there were books that he had read about psychedelic mushrooms,
Mm,
and so people were thinking he was, or like something about like healing through natural like mushroom stuff or psychedelics, and so we were thinking like, okay, well, was he like trying to find some kind of remedy for his back pain,
right.
and uh, that he was looking for that, and then maybe some had some kind of psychotic break because he's just eaten. One of the books was about finding mushrooms in the wild
Oh my
and
god.
which ones you can eat, identifying poisonous mushrooms. Like this guy's walking through the woods picking
Just
up
eating
mushrooms off the
mushrooms.
ground.
Oh my god. That's how that one guy died in Into the Wild.
And then yeah, so many people thinking is he just have some kind of like psychotic break and go nuts off this like psychedelic remedies he's looking into or whatever. I don't know about that, but something, just snapped because it just all his friends are shocked. All his friends are, this is insane. That is totally out of the blue. Totally doesn't make any sense. Um, but yeah, so he just decides to kill the CEO of United. Like it's his fault, you know. Like, and he didn't even point to like this guy passed some regulation that denies people. Nothing specific. I think he's just a guy. He's
Yeah.
just a health insurance guy.
A guy
It
who
could have been
was going
anyone.
to a meeting. He
Yeah,
happened to be there.
he had a conference in New York, and then just in the morning, Luigi just shoots him in the back and runs away. I mean, it's just completely insane. And now he's being lifted up as like because again because of who the victim was.
Hmm.
Just like Jordan Neely, he's a homeless black guy. Okay, so he must be the victim in this case, and then that means Daniel Penny is the villain. Well, okay, this health insurance guy, yeah, people don't like health insurance, so that means he had it coming or something, and Luigi's a hero for doing it, and serves him right. No one's, you know, everybody's actually even happy about this or something. It's just completely the callousness of people
The
is
reactions have been
crazy.
insane. They've all but said good. Like it's
I mean, they
basically
said that.
well, a lot of the important people, the
Yeah,
politicians, it's been well, we don't condone murder, but we do understand. Like
yeah. Wink,
what?
nod, wink.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. It's getting kind of a pass. Yeah, it's just yeah. It's the nature of the cases, nature of the identity of the people, who
Hmm.
they are, what you know characteristics they have, who they work for, um, has become. But it's like he can't be the Bonnie and Clyde or the Robin Hood because he's a rich kid. That's what he has all the privilege in the world, and he's not
Right.
even, if it was like some poor black kid who got denied coverage and now is on a death sentence for cancer or something, and it's like, all right, I mean, there now that fits the narrative more.
Right.
This doesn't even fit the kind of left wing narrative of, you know,
Yeah,
what
but
they're even going for.
the reality never does. You don't let reality get in the way of the story.
I mean, it just makes the story not great,
Well, yeah, if you're interested in the truth, but they're interested in the agenda, not the truth. It's like the Jordan Neely thing, like the whole thing that when the cops during the trial came out and said, "Oh yeah, he was alive, but we didn't try to give him CPR." They did chest compressions, but they didn't want to administer mouth to mouth because they were worried about getting AIDS. So I mean, they probably could have saved him, but he died from that. So then it's like,
Yeah.
well, is it Penny's fault or is it the cop's fault who didn't react, or like are these the consequences of being a drug addict on the subway who's threatening people?
Yeah, I mean, I think the New York City criminal justice system is the one that really failed Jordan Neely because he obviously needs some kind of help, and he'd been arrested many times
Yeah.
before, something like 40 times or something, and on with violent charges, and just turned around and released. And uh, if that didn't happen, he'd probably be in a hospital with getting the care he needs versus being dead. you know, and we're talking about a system, a broken system, yeah, a system that turns violent criminals back out on the street over and over
Well,
again.
it's a system of misguided compassion where it's like what's the humane thing to do? It's not to keep them against their will. They're not. It's to let them be free. That's the system. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
it's better for them to be out on the street hauling carts of garbage, sleeping in whatever place they can, probably getting in fights with each other and other people. That's the humane thing to do. It's inhumane to try to get them some kind of help that they don't want. That's inhumane.
Well, they're kind of talking out of both sides of the mouth with that because one thing is like, well, consent. You can't restrain somebody
Right.
if this is the way they want to live their life. Then they ought to be free and have the autonomy or whatever to, which autonomy actually means a law unto oneself.
Right.
Right? Yeah, good luck with that. To live on the street and do drugs and just do whatever they want to do. But at the same, and then on the other side of the mouth, they're saying, well, this isn't even actually his choice. This is just the system of he's a product of his environment, and we just don't have enough. The government isn't giving people enough houses for free, so that's why he's homeless. He's unhoused, and so that's the
Unhoused. Yeah.
problem. It's the government. It's the system's fault. Again, the system is failing him, and if things were different, then he wouldn't even be in the situation he's in. He's not even choosing to be on the street. He is just
He's
a
a victim
product
of
of his
circumstance.
environment and a victim. Yeah,
Right.
exactly, victim of circumstance. And so it's like, well, which is it? He's choosing this, and we should let him have his freedom and autonomy, or he's a, a victim of the system, and it's like, well, both. Okay, all right,
Well, which one do I need to answer at the time? That's what it is.
yeah.
So
So,
for
do you think
clarity,
people? Yeah, yeah.
for
Go ahead.
clarity, he was arrested 42 times.
42.
Between 2019 and 2021, he was arrested 3 times for unprovoked assaults on women in the subway. So,
And then
old
hearing him
habits.
screaming at women and children,
Yeah.
and people and then Daniel Penny steps in, uh, and he gets brought up on charges for that.
Why are you getting on the subway anymore? Like, just stop getting on the subway.
I think he was in school or something. I mean, people can't afford it. Like either that or the taxi. Even taxi is
That's
expensive.
wild.
So I don't know. So do people just not know murder is wrong?
I thought a lot about this week, and
Like Luigi in Luigi's case?
it's not that people don't know murder is wrong. I think it's hard to argue against murder in our modern society when we just spent like the past year and election cycle arguing that a woman's right to kill her baby is the most important thing to her in the world,
Right.
and then be surprised when they're like, well, that guy had it coming.
Do you think that so the argument the it's a clump of cells abortion argument, pro-choice abortion argument basically isn't really an argument anymore. I mean,
No.
people who make that argument are kind of behind the curve or
Way
the
behind.
conversation on that. At this point, it is like, yeah, it's a person and they don't have rights yet,
At
or
this point,
it,
it's up to
they can be
birth,
killed.
or past birth. It's
Yeah,
like when it gets here,
yeah,
we'll think
you will
about it.
never find a Democrat or anybody on the left like that who in any sort of position of actually doing something about it, like a legislator or somebody that will give you a point of rights of
Right.
life. They'll never do it. Biden will never say, well, 6 months pregnant, you can't kill that. No, they'll never give you a number. So the only conclusion anyone is left to come to is there are no limits. It's up to birth.
Right.
It's
Right.
fully to birth. If you give no limits on, say, hey, I would say conception. I would say life begins at conception and a heartbeat's there at 5 weeks. So most women don't even know they're pregnant about until they miss their period, which is about 4 weeks or so. And then by the time you have a human heart beating, and now you're choosing to end a human being's heartbeat, that is murder. That's the willing taking of another life. Um, so I can say all those things. I can detail it out like that, right, and give you reasons why and everything. They'll just say woman's choice,
Right.
healthcare autonomy, bodily autonomy. That's it. And so yeah, so that's what it comes down to. Is the mother basically has more rights. So do you think this conversation, since we've shifted from, well, it's not a human, well, it's not a person, um, it's a lump of cells or whatever, to, yeah, it is a human being, but the mother's rights supersede their rights, and um, it's unfortunate, whatever. They don't even say it's unfortunate anymore.
No, it's
It's just, but do you think that mindset and that shift we've had in the abortion argument has corroded the rest of our thinking of murder in general, of
oh
anything
yeah,
else?
it has to 100%, because what it comes down to is, they used to make the argument safe, legal, and rare, and that was out the window. And it used to be the bleeding heart case is always rape, incest, or life of the mother, which
Yeah.
is like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent. So it's
That's not
not
what's
even in the
keeping
argument.
Planned Parenthood doors open.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, all of that's out the window. It is really convenience at this point, because I want to do something else. I
Right.
don't feel like being a mother right now. And
It's
that,
circumstantial of the death, just like Mangione. What were the
right,
circumstances? Well, he was a CEO of a health insurance company. Oh, okay. Well, I get it. It's
right,
like,
exactly.
well, she's in school and she wants to finish, her poetry degree. Oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's
You know what I
understandable.
mean? I mean, it's the circumstances of when a life is valuable or not. Um, and that's the Nazis had a phrase, "life unworthy of life."
Well, yeah, and
That
what
they
the
had.
the thing that's crazy is that what makes it invaluable, it seems, in modern times, is it's in my way. That's what makes it invaluable. It's in my way. The
Yeah.
baby is keeping me from having the life that I wanted, or from getting the job that I want, or having the degree that I want. And in this case, I don't know who is perceived that this guy did them wrong, but it's like, well, he's in the way of our health care that we have a right to.
Yeah.
They're just in
Yeah.
the way.
There's different rights. There's like neutral rights and positive rights. It's saying like, well, I have the right to free speech. I have the right to bear arms. Uh, but that doesn't mean that someone else has to give me something.
Right.
Like but they're trying to say you have a right to health care, which means you can demand the work of a doctor for free for you. It's like, well, that's slavery, isn't it? I mean, like, where you like you don't pay, and they just you are owed the product of a physician's work.
Right.
You're owed it. Never mind he went to medical school. Never mind he chose to be a doctor in the first place. Never mind, all the cost of becoming a doctor, whatever. It's you owe these people medical care, and it's like, okay, what if someone demanded come to your job and say, I have a right to the product of your work, of your
Right.
vocation, of what you do. What? I mean, you're gonna get maybe less doctors. I hope that's not
Well,
the case.
well, the
Uh,
answer is always too that it's going to be subsidized. The government will pay for it, and by the
well,
government they mean we'll pay for it.
and they have to pay for it, but that's why the prices go up.
Right.
Of medical insurance and the insurance. They know that the government is subsidizing people's medical insurance. So he's like, you mean the people who print money are paying? Oh, guess what? Oh, guess what? The price is going up. If medical care and pharmaceutical drugs only cost what people could actually afford to pay, they wouldn't cost that much.
Right.
But the only reason they do is because they know Uncle Sam is paying for you. And so, okay, well, he prints money in his basement. So I'm, the price. Same with college. The price goes up.
Yeah,
Everything, the price goes up. Everything the government subsidizes like that, the price goes up and the quality goes down.
drastically.
Like college, with grants and loans and subsidized loans and stuff. It's like the colleges aren't getting any better. In fact, they're getting worse. And a bachelor degree is becoming more and more useless.
Mm.
Um, and the price is just skyrocketing. Prices still going up. Versus, and you think of something in the free market like cell phones and televisions. It used to be only the super rich had them at the
Right.
beginning, with big brick phone, and flat screen TVs or whatever. Then over time, they kept buying them, and there was money for research and development. And the companies said, "Hey, we want more customers, and it's not just rich people. What if we could make it more accessible to everyone?" Now everyone has a smartphone. You know what I mean? The guy
Right.
sitting on the bus stop has a smartphone. The homeless person
The
with a
homeless
cheap line
person.
has a smartphone. You know, and that only happens because of the free market and because government is not subsidizing those things. And so that I mean, again, the health insurance and pharmaceutical companies, the prices are so high, they couldn't be in business if it was just normal people paying what they can. They couldn't be in business, and so the price would have to go low. And so, but the government's subsidizing it. They know that. So guess what? Prices hiking up.
But
So
I mean, all of that's irrelevant to people who aren't going to pay for it anyway. Like you're talking about prices on stuff because me and you are paying for stuff, right? So like I'm seeing that dribble out of my paycheck every time I pay for my insurance to cover
mhm,
whatever I need.
mhm.
These people in this fantasy world, they're going to get it for free. The government's going to pay for it, and at no point are they ever going to pay for anything. So it doesn't matter what it costs; it's going to get paid for. None of that's relevant to them. Give me a
Yeah.
phone. They'd rather have subpar things for free than work to pay for something that's good.
Oh yeah.
It's just that
Yeah.
as long as I don't have to work for it, it doesn't matter how bad it is.
Yeah. And you end up paying for it in other ways, in the quality of the care, and you look at like Europe and Canada, and like you don't want to get cancer in Canada, because
Well,
they're
they'll just tell
coming
you,
here
"Do you want to
for
die?
research.
We'll help you die."
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're pushing assisted suicide in those countries.
But
It's
I mean,
like,
that's what we're talking about too. Like,
yeah, death. Yeah, life is just, yeah. You feel bad. You feeling sad? Come on in. We'll
do you
suicide you.
remember like 2 years ago that article that you read about how the end of Down syndrome
Yeah.
and the end of Down syndrome was abortion? That was how they were going to cure it.
Yeah, I forget which one. It was like Norway or Finland or somewhere,
Yeah.
like has eradicated uh, Down syndrome, or has ended all cases of Down syndrome in their country. It's like, wow, new medication. Wow, what is it? New therapy? Some kind of miracle? No, we just kill them before they're born.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, that'll decrease the population of Down syndrome people. It's like, again, it's that Nazi life unworthy of life.
Right.
They see you as like, well, this is normal, this is good. Same with old people, or they just seem as useless and in the way, like you said, in the way. You're just costing the state money, and it's just such a barbaric, unchristian way of looking at these things, and just life should not depend on what job you have. Your value of your life should not depend on if you're a company, what company you work for, you know. And that's
And
exactly the case
that's
in
like
Mangione.
it's growing too. That idea of like inconvenient people or people not worthy of life. Like it used to be the infirm or the old or the people that are terminally ill, and it was always cloaked in that compassion. Like, "Oh, they're terminally ill. Can you imagine how much pain they're in? This is inhumane to keep them alive. They should have the option to die." And now it's like, "Oh, you feel depressed?" I remember having this conversation with somebody because somebody I worked with once was they wanted to be a psychology student, and they were talking about assisted suicide or whatever. And so I asked them, like, "What do you think about assisted suicide for psychological issues?" And they were like, "Well, I don't know if we should or not." And I was like, "Well, do you think psychological issues are cool issues, right? Like, if somebody who has cancer, are they more sick than somebody who has schizophrenia? Are they less sick? Are they the same? Is it equal? Is it real?" And they kind of like, "Well, maybe you're right. Maybe if they do feel that way, we should let them kill themselves. If they're having a mental issue. If you're having a bad day." But it's like growing from there too, where it's like, oh, an unwanted pregnancy or any pregnancy, whatever you're
Mhm.
feeling, and then this guy on the street, or how far is it going to keep going to where it's like, ah, man, we thought this kids was a good idea, but these 5-year-olds are real inconvenient. Maybe we just send them somewhere, and we don't have to think about it anymore.
Dude, that's what people do with Down syndrome kids. And I mean, they do. They send them away to live somewhere else in like some kind of clinic home or something, and think, well, this is better for them, and it's just now we don't have to be a family with Down syndrome kid. It's like,
Damn, that's like the. I mean, that's the nursing home too. Like, well, someone's got to take care of grandma. It ain't gonna be me.
yeah. Well, it's because it's the shift of what the fundamental building block of humanity is. It used to be from beginning of time, it's understood that it was the family.
Mm,
The family is the fundamental building block of of a society, and since like over the last 100 years or so, in modernism, it got shifted to the individual is
right,
the building block. So everything is catered to. It's not catered to a family. It's not a cater. Wages aren't catered to a man with a family to feed. Right. It's
right.
catered to a man with himself to feed. Okay. Well, guess what? It's paid a lot less. you know, we don't have to care about that. And women in the workplace and kids working and you are your own um, universe.
Right.
You're not part of a wider cosmos that you're in harmony with and playing your role and playing your part. You are the cosmos and you are your own universe. You are your own God. Autonomy, a law unto oneself. You don't live in a system of law, of God-given law that we're all part of. You are a law unto yourself. You make right and wrong. What's your truth? You know,
Mm,
and so well, when you have a bunch of universes, yeah, it's going to start getting chaotic out there because everybody's their own god in their own universe, and they can remake themselves. Literally, I'm a woman now. I'm a whatever that even means. I can't even define it, but it's just I want to remake myself in this way, and it's weird because that desire actually is true, which the Bible talks about being born again. You know,
hmm
as Christians, we uh, are remade. We're made new, right? Such were some of you, right? These sinners
Right.
and thieves and defilers and everything. And such were some of you, but God made you alive in Christ. And so you are reborn, you are remade, and that regeneration is the goal, but it's through Christ. And but everybody thinks, well, I'll just take mushrooms or or something, and like I can find my own. I can remake myself, or I'll just be a woman now, or I'll just
I'll be nothing.
whatever. Yeah, and so, and then everybody's trying to be their own god, and God is a hard job,
Mm,
Like it's no wonder they're all stressed out and have anxiety. They've been tasked with being God, making up their own truth and their own law and right and wrong and ethics system and morality and family and love and remake all these things in your image because you're the god. It's like that's
right.
stressful and that's going to stress people out. People can't bear the weight of the task of being a god to themselves. It's freaking everybody out.
Well, I mean, now they want the ultimate power of God, which is to have the power of life and death. Like we decide who lives and dies. That's that in Revelation
Yeah.
when Jesus shows up, he says, "I have the keys to death and Hades." Like, no, we want those keys. We decide who goes in the grave and who doesn't. That's
Hey,
where we're
give
at
me
now.
back the keys. Who had that
It's
song earlier? Judas
so
Priest or somebody had that song.
no.
Give me back the key. That's what it was. I can't remember. Please, I can't remember.
So then Daniel Penny, who for all intents and purposes should be a hero, right? Because there was, man, I don't know if you remember this. There was a story in what year was this? 2021. There was a woman who got raped on a train with passengers, and everybody watched. Nobody stopped to help. They just, not my problem. Head down, look away.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and he sees that escalation and he steps in and saves. I don't know who, but whoever else on that train. Nobody else is going to step in. And like you
No.
said, there were women and children, there were toddlers. He puts himself between them. He handles the situation. Everybody walks off except for the offender that day, and he's the villain. He's the evil one. He's the scourge. He's the one we want to throw our hate at.
Yeah, in his mind, he's thinking the exact opposite. If I don't do this, if I don't step in, if I don't,
Right,
no one else is here. I'm the one who, is not a cop,
right,
around. Like I have training in combat and, uh, you know, physical restraining somebody, uh, from the Marines. I got to do something. I can't just stand by and watch him carry out one of these threats, which he's apparently done in the past. But Daniel Penny didn't know that. He didn't know anything about the guy. He's just
right.
thinking, here's a man who's bigger and stronger than all these people he's threatening. They're terrified. I can do something about this. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do something. You
Mm,
know, If you just stand there and watch, like most people do, and then the guy just decks some old woman and kills her, I mean, I mean, he can't. He's just got to live the rest of his life thinking, "I didn't step in. I didn't do something. I could have
Right.
stopped him. I could have saved that woman's life. I could have, woulda, coulda, shoulda." And so, but instead, he takes action. He steps in, and not in an uncontrolled way. He didn't go crazy on him.
Right.
He didn't
Right.
start swinging on Jordan Neal. I'm sure he does have military trainings where he knows he could just kill somebody with his bare hands.
Right.
They're taught to do that. He could have, and he didn't. He didn't even choke him out to be passed out to he could have choked him out to where he's unconscious in 10 seconds, but he didn't do that. He just restrained him because he didn't know what was going on and think, well, this guy just gonna hold him until the cops come. He could have knocked him out. He could have punched him. He could have kicked him. He could have slammed him, but he didn't. He took the least lethal way to restrain somebody in that way, and he did that. And then the guy just dies, and it's like, oh, you're a monster. It's like crap.
Well,
Yeah.
that really shows like the kind of the falseness of the arguments that they make. Because when George Floyd died, I remember the argument was like, well, why did they have their knee on his neck for so long? Their training is horrible. They
Yeah.
should have been better prepared. And then this guy does do that. He does restrain him in a way that is non-lethal, and it doesn't matter. It makes
Doesn't
no
matter.
difference.
The arguments are disingenuous.
No, all of
Those arguments, oh, he could have done. Shut up. It doesn't matter. It's like I heard Biden say like one time, well, why shoot to kill? Why not just like shoot him in the leg or something? And it's like, you dummy. Like somebody's coming at you. Every cop is trained. Every person with firearms instruction has been trained. You shoot to kill. You shoot to stop the person. And it's hard to shoot at someone's leg. They're running around. You can't.
right.
It's like just shoot him in the trigger finger. It's like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And if you shoot him in the leg and he dies, you're still a monster.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter that he died and you shot, and that's it. So yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And so people can't identify a hero. I think that's what people's perception of this is. People can't identify a hero, and where does that come from? Does it come from our culture of deconstructing all of our heroes, all our superheroes, all our action heroes? Indiana Jones and Luke Skywalker are just angry, bitter old men,
Right.
and to be replaced by women.
Right.
We want to deconstruct the hero, kind of Watchmen, right? Like Alan Moore and in the comics and stuff. And we want complex protagonists, in our stories, in our
Right.
books, and movies, and TV shows and stuff. Have we done that so far to where we can't even identify who a hero actually is? Or maybe there is no such thing as a hero. And I think about that. I think, okay, look at Indiana Jones. Look at the old kind of stories about heroes who the male protagonist is competent, confident,
Right.
smart, clever, cool, and the girl likes him. He gets the bad guy. The whole thing is like, well, isn't that kind of boring? Isn't that a little? Don't we evolve like? And to some degree, I do think it is interesting. These difficult men, these complex male characters, but that's not anything new because almost every person, every male character in the Bible, every person in the Bible,
Right.
is a real person. You want your characters to be real. Where they're these cardboard pop bang Superman cardboard cutouts, there's no depth or dimension to these characters, and that is true to an extent. And so the like postmodern reaction to that was to just deconstruct all the heroes and make them these conflicted people, which is more true to real life, which I agree with, right? Every real life hero that we look up to has some things that are like, ooh, what is that? Like George Washington owned slaves, okay, or just like we can pick apart any human and it makes them more real, and it's and that is true. But how do we get back to a hero we can admire and follow, or should we admire, or should there be any hero worship or anything like that?
Well, on the one hand, I think the deconstruction of heroes to make them more complex or relatable, I think is disingenuous. Because when you talk about someone like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or all, people who did great things in history, and then we find the flaw instead of looking at that and thinking, "Wow, he was just human." It doesn't bring it back down to earth and kind of take the hero worship down a notch, which is good. Instead, they want to throw him out, tear down his statue, change the name on the university. He's irredeemable. If there's any flaw in them, they're irredeemable. And of course, everybody has a flaw, so nobody's going to be past that. So I don't know if it's genuine when that complaint comes that like, oh, these heroes aren't relatable. It's like, I don't think you want them to be relatable. I think you don't want them to exist. It's like that scene in Spider-Man when the Goblin tells him, "What do they love more than a hero? To see a hero fall." It's
Right.
kind of true. I think that is what they want.
I don't want that.
Well, no, of course you
When you
don't, but
like
you have a Christian worldview.
but I mean, just even like, when we hear of like some pastor who, something something happened, where like,
Oh, it's devastating.
yeah, it's like, oh man, I liked that guy, or oh, that was, you know, I don't want that. That's not, I'm very disappointed. We can be
Right.
we're so disappointed, but I think it is that like it depends on how much faith and like stock you're putting into
Hmm.
somebody, and maybe that's what needs to be restrained. Is like not worship. You can admire people, but don't worship them. Like there's no pastor or theologian or anybody that I agree with 100%.
Right.
Like even Doug Wilson and John Piper and like whoever you want to say, like the greats, like I don't. There's nobody that I agree like across the board exactly line up on what they say, what they teach, what they preach, and I think that's kind of good to
Mm.
have you know some nuance to who you're following and who you're admiring or who inspires you or whatever.
Mm.
Um, Keep them human. We put people on a pedestal, and then however devastated or heartbroken we are whenever they fall, to show us how much faith we actually had in that person, in how they upheld your worldview and your ideas.
Mm.
Because then it's not just, oh, this is a human being who fell. It's, well, everything they said is a lie. I
Right.
can't.
Right.
Everything they
Right.
said that I listened to or believed is in question now.
Right.
Well, that's a problem, because that means they were. So a bad person can say a true thing, right? Someone who has deep sin
Mm.
in their life and history
Right.
can say true things, and everything they said about the Bible and about God and the doctrine and theology that they taught is still true, but
Right.
it wasn't coming from them. It was it was just a truth that they've helped teach, and you heard it and you listened to it and it's true. But um, but when you say like, well, now I don't know, it's like people who fall away from the church because
Mm.
they were hurt by a pastor and stuff.
Right.
And it's like, well, where was your faith? That shows your faith was in these people, and that's misplaced big time. Because we're all sinners in the trenches together. No one's
Right.
higher than anybody else. Yeah, elders and overseers are held to a higher accountability as far as being above reproach, and they'll be held more accountable for the people they're leading. But that doesn't really do anything as far as like they struggle with sin the same as
Mm.
and that's we have to understand that, and not put people on pedestals. I've
Well,
never
I mean,
really had like a problem with that. I've always like thought, everybody's about as bad as me. Even somebody that looks like squeaky clean, I'm like, they got something. I know there's something, because I know we all do. We're all humans. I just know that, and that's okay. I'm not like
uh,
saying I'm better than anybody or I'm worse than anybody. We're all kind of just, fighting it together.
I kind of had to grow into that. I remember when Robbie Zacharias died and everything came out about
Mm.
him,
Yeah, his Thai massages.
and it was yeah, yeah, the massage
Oh
parlor that he
God.
frequented, and everybody was ready to throw him out, and it was like, well, I don't know. I mean, we're gonna discredit everything he ever did in his life because of this thing, which, yeah, it was like constant apparently, and it was a lifelong thing. But it's like you're saying, like, well, everybody's got something.
Yeah, it is. It is when it's specific to that. Like
It,
if if he was like an apologetics guy, right? Ravi Zacharias
yeah, yeah, yeah.
from Frozen. You here?
I think we're lagging.
Are we on?
Hold on.
Can you hear me? Oh no! Don't put that. What are you doing?
I
Are we Ukraine now?
don't know, I'm trying to get this going again. I don't know
Yeah.
what happened. We got we
Oh
got
my
hacked.
gosh. The Ukrainians. Wow. Yeah. The minutes were still ticking. No, what I'm saying is, if so, Robbie Zacharias was an apologetics guy, and so okay, that's a lane, and he's teaching that and all the whole like logic of God and all that. Okay, cool. And he's getting rubbing tugs on the side, and it's like, okay, well, that's bad, and that's sin, and but everything he said about the apologetic stuff is still consistent and true. Like now
Right.
it's different if he's got this sexual sin and he's like Mr. Purity thing. You know what I mean? That's when it
Mm-hmm.
becomes kind of a little like more egregious for me because it's like that's specifically the thing you were talking about. Like if he's an apologetics guy and it comes out he's a you know wild-eyed heretic atheist or something, it's like,
Right.
well, you know, I do kind of question everything he said because was it all, if he's pushing evidentialist apologetics, which I have problems with anyway, and then I find out he's this atheist and just never believed in God ever, and like had this whole heresy thing. I'm like, okay, well, where do I put that apologetics? Because that's the same lane, you know. And so
Mm-hmm.
if he's like Mr. Purity and all these things and saying, all he's teaching about sexual morality and whatever, and then he's got this deep sexual sin, that's like, okay, now I have to like figure out. That is a little more difficult, I think, when it's so
Right.
specific to the skeleton in your closet,
Mm.
that comes out,
Yeah, that's
Otherwise, if it's in different lanes, it's like, well, that sucks, but that's nothing to do with apologetics, really. So, I mean,
well, I've kind of reoriented who I kind of admire too. I think that's changed too as I've gotten older. A lot of it's been from documentaries that have come out in recent years about like sports heroes or icons from the
oh
90s
yeah,
and
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
2000s.
We love, yeah, you're right. We love like seeing people fall, but I mean, I don't, I don't know, like the whole like JFK,
Hmm.
like all these things coming about JFK. There was a time when people knew things and didn't blow the whistle.
Yeah.
And it's like they represented something more that people are going to be really crushed. So we shouldn't do this. We
Mm.
shouldn't tear this man down
Right.
because there are bigger things going on, and he represents more. You know what I mean? I guess there was a
Yeah,
little
he was
bit
an
more.
icon.
Do you think that's right, or should you just blow the
Oh,
whistle? You blow the whistle. See something, say something. No consideration of like, hey, what are the like maybe cultural or even political consequences of this? Yes, it's true, but you know, blow the whistle. You
yeah,
know,
it's too dangerous to have a figurehead. That's the problem.
mm.
It
Shouldn't have
because
that
they
figurehead in
can
the
fall
first
for it.
place.
Yeah, in the first place. Because like
Yeah.
the ideal is important, but the person should never be the ideal.
Mm.
If the whole
Yeah.
movement and the whole belief system and the whole ideology hinges on this one guy, then it's not
That's
worth
the
keeping.
that's the Harvey Dent, right?
Yes, that's exactly
So
what it
he was
is.
the bad guy, but it's like, oh, hero, and they knew the truth, and they're like, no,
No, yeah,
it was it the hero Gotham needs right now,
yeah,
and it's like, well, they don't need the truth. They need
right, exactly.
yeah. So there's nothing to that though, you think? Of
I mean, mm, I,
like the Cuban Missile Crisis go the other way if everybody knew that Marilyn Monroe was doing more than singing him happy birthday?
well, I think if we were, oh man, because I mean, he ran on charisma and he won on charisma. Like he got to accomplish that, but that was also his downfall. Was his charisma got
Yeah.
him into a lot of trouble too.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know. Like it's like I was saying. I've kind of shifted who I admire from people who did great things because then you're like, man, and how did they? And there's always the tough period where they're like, oh, well, this is when I wasn't making money and it was really a struggle, but I stuck it out and I made it through and I came out on the other side. Now I'm a success. And then there's
Right.
like that little addendum in the middle where it's like, yeah, and while I wasn't making money, I got a divorce and lost my entire family because I wasn't supporting them. But it's okay because I
Yeah.
came out on the other side, and it's like, well, you lost the important stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's like kind of the Pete Hegseth thing, as far as like
Right.
him being nominated for Department of Defense, the Secretary of Defense. Um, and he's, on his third wife, cheated on all of them. Um, it's like, well, what does that have to do with the, Secretary of Defense work?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, like defending, but people kind of compartmentalize that way,
Yeah.
and should we as Christians just kind of shrug that off, or like, what's the, but then no one's qualified.
Right. True.
If
True.
all the truth of everybody was revealed, I mean, everybody sins, and so it's like, well, okay, just they got to sin this much and not that much, and then
Right.
no,
Or this
or
way and not
this
that way.
sin and not that sin, or
Right.
like, you know, I don't know, if you're here to do a job, yeah, I don't want him to marry my daughter, but you know,
But
I'm
you can
not
fight next to
voting
me.
for son-in-laws, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, Wilson talks about a lot with David how like his commander, he gives his nephews his commander, and so he's like, well, that's the guy I can trust. That's going to be my guy. But he's a bastard, and the
Yeah.
guy who's fighting against is the good one, but he's on the other side. So they're enemies by circumstance, not by character.
Mm.
So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, David's a good, case study of what we're talking about, of
Yeah.
like, a man after God's own heart,
Mm.
and then
Everything.
talk about voting for a leader and finding out their past. I mean, good grief, like, no one's voting for David.
Right.
Gosh, yeah, I mean, that's insane. But yes, but like, all right, there's redemption, you know,
Right.
there's comeback, there's forgiveness and atonement, and those things, and that's something that the woke doesn't understand. They are a
No.
religion with their God does not forgive,
Mm-mm.
and you're just guilty and you just pay forever. Like
Mm-mm.
reparations is a complete joke, completely disingenuous, because that's saying you could put a dollar amount on slavery. Well, that's what they did.
I never thought about it that way.
It's like, oh, black person cost this much. Oh, now they cost this much. It's like,
Yeah, inflation. It went
you're
up a
just
little
going
bit.
back to putting a price on black people. That's insane. It's disingenuous. It's not true. You just have
Mm.
the only answer is pay forever.
Right.
Just which is hell. That's definition is of hell. You paying for your sins forever. You are eternally guilty,
Mm.
and you have to pay for eternity. And so that's it. You can't be good enough, and so you just pay, and that's the whole
Mm.
white guilt thing. Of
Right.
you're just guilty, and that's it. You just apologize for the rest of your life, and just pay the oppressed. You're an oppressor because of your color of your skin, and your sentence is to just pay the oppressed until things are flipped, and then it'll be okay. Like Ibram X. Kendi says, the only remedy for uh, discrimination is reverse discrimination.
Mm.
It's like, well, then when does it become? When do they become the ones in power then? Because white people were enslaved, and it's like, well, yeah, but not here.
That
Okay,
doesn't pertain to me, so that doesn't help me.
or the term minority majority, that always gets me. Like Chicago is a minority majority, but it's like they're
So
they're
they're
still a
just a
minority.
majority.
This majority in this whole city or this whole state or whatever, but it's just they're still a minority. It's like I can't remember, it was like Borat or something, or when he's like, I went to Africa, they have a lot of minorities there. It's like, what?
Oh God.
Completely insane thinking.
But that's
But
another thing that's like we can't define terms, we can't say anything correctly. The language is dead. Nothing means anything. Every argument is fake. Every hero is fake. Like nothing's real anymore. It's all
yeah, I think we're in a time now, as far as like breaking down our heroes and skeletons in the closet and everything, is Trump is kind of the first one I can think of, as far as like everybody knows everything.
yeah.
And it's like that Chappelle meme where he's like, even if he did do it, you know what I mean? Who cares?
It's true.
We've all kind of like got to it. It's like, yeah, I don't care. I don't know. I don't care. We need something to change. Things need to change. And people are just kind of looking past that. And I don't know, man. Yeah, it's a hard thing to, because you want to just like lose forever standing on a principle or something and
Well,
never,
it's
you
not even a
know,
real principle. It's like when you want to weigh out the argument, it's like, well, Trump cheated on his wife. It's like, okay, well, Dick Cheney lied us into a war that killed millions of people in 2 continents. Like, what are we? Which one's worse? Which one do you want to stick with?
there's nobody. Again, you're left with nobody.
Right,
If you know, we can't. Jesus isn't the president, you know, and he shouldn't be. And so you're not voting for a person so much as you're voting in a certain direction.
right,
I've always seen it as like it's not about defining the right perfect man, the perfect person. It's they who will vote, who will veto things and make appointments and you know, appoint judges and policies and things that will go in this direction.
right.
You know, less dead babies every year.
And
Who will,
honestly,
you know, in Trump versus Roe, and it's like,
that
great,
should be the
awesome.
only argument. Every other candidate that got up and held a Bible and gave lip service to Jesus, whatever, they did nothing about abortion.
It
Trump's the
wasn't their
only
own
one.
Bible. They didn't print their own Bible. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. But he's the only one who ever did anything that put any kind of halt on abortion in any way.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
only one. So
Yeah.
what's the argument against him? There's not one. There's not a real one.
Yeah, I mean there isn't. I mean that's why, you know, I think for most, I would hope, I would say most Christians, he became the candidate of choice because it's just, you know, it's a direction. You're voting in a direction. It's not about this person and his perfection, perfect moral record. It's the direction. Who is he going to appoint? What is he going to veto? What is he going to push? What bills is he going to sign? You're voting in a certain direction, and that is the direction that, at least for now, gives Christians more rights to worship as we ought to, and, you know, on our way to a more Christian nation. And so that's what we want. It's either that or a pagan nation. There's no neutral. Neutral is a myth. Neutrality is a myth, and
But
that's
that
fading
idea of
right now.
directions, the directions too, it really brings it back to these two cases because you have two guys who ostensibly find themselves in the same situation, but it's two different directions. Like you have the one guy who didn't want to get involved but took responsibility because it was the right thing to do, and you have the other guy who pure chaos, just
Hmm.
chaos. Like which direction do you want to go, responsibility or chaos? That's where we're standing right now, and we're seeing it really clearly defined by which way people decide they want to go, who they want to admire, who they want to follow.
I think Luigi too is very online. He's very like a lot of the support is coming from things I see on the internet, and it's just, I think
Right.
maybe it's kind of a viral moment, you
Mm,
know. Um, that, you know, it helps that he's young and fit and like good looking. And
right.
all these girls are like, oh, there's kind of the jokes of that going on. If he's some fat incel, you know, there would not be, I don't think, this much just kind of rallying around him
Well,
uh,
it's
as
the
much.
result of like the group thing too, because I've seen talk to people who are like, he got him, good for him, more CEOs, and I'm thinking like, what problem do you have with United Healthcare? Like, what situation have you ever had where you can grind an axe? None,
It's
zero.
not the specifics. It's not about the specifics. It's about just health insurance companies are evil.
Right.
So because
That's just a
they
fact.
can't just provide for every single person,
Right.
uh, so they're evil. And that is one thing between like difference between the right and the left is the right tends to think the left are just misguided and ignorant and just kind
Mhm.
of you don't understand it. You're short sighted.
Right.
You know, you're just not informed enough about the facts of things, and you're not thinking rationally. Maybe you're being too emotional. Um, it's that the left thinks the right is evil. They think they're demons and evil and just like a bad person.
Right.
They're attributing malice to everything. You know, it's like you just hate poor people. You just hate them. You're just a racist. You're just a fascist. You're just, you know, there's no benefit of a doubt. There's no
Mhm.
nuance. There's no, well, maybe they think this or they just haven't seen that, whatever. Um, and that should tell you, I think, a lot about the mind, both left and right mindsets. Just politically thinking of like, where are these people's mindset at? You know, you're just going to immediately attributing to malice what you
Right.
could very well attribute to ignorance or stupidity, um, and that says a lot, I think, about your political side,
Mm.
whichever it may be.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say the left, but secularism as a whole, it's a suicide cult. So like there's no rationalizing with that. Like they want to kill themselves, they want to kill their babies, they want to mutilate themselves, they want to end all flourishing, all reproduction, all any kind of anything. Like if it's good, it has to go. We have to be these amorphous gray blobs of nothing that sit in buildings and virtually do everything. Nobody leaves the house, nobody does anything productive.
Yeah. So how do we reconstruct our heroes? Do we need more movies and stories of just like the cardboard cutout, one-dimensional hero, big square chin, like
I mean, there's nothing wrong with the some of that, right? It's the too idealized for it's the idea that like I Love Lucy, they slept in twin beds while she was pregnant. Like what are we doing?
yeah, you got to be real. You got to
Yeah,
be
we have to be
real.
real. Exactly.
You know who one is, I think, a good kind of like person to look at. It's totally random and totally off the wall, but kind of is in my head is uh, Alan Matthews, the dad
The
from
dad.
Boy Meets World. Corey Matthews' dad. Uh, he was like such a good guy. It just seemed
Hmm.
like a very down to earth, normal dad, and uh, but smart and fair. That kind of like
Mm.
stern but fair.
Right,
You
right.
characters, and I think that's good. People like that. Um, and he, I remember there was episodes where he was like wrong about something, and he apologized and
Mm.
took ownership of that and stuff. And I think of Jonathan Kent too from Smallville, or just
Right,
that
yeah.
whole thing. Like the reason Superman is because of Jonathan Kent.
Right,
And it's like he's this good man. And so there's something to integrity,
right,
honesty,
right.
taking
Confession.
responsibility.
Confession is a big part of that too. Being
Yeah,
able to say you were wrong.
yeah, being able to say you were wrong and saying, you know what, I did that. There's no excuse, and just here we go. Like I
But
was
I
wrong.
mean, do you
Own it
notice
up.
something about what you're saying though? Is everybody you're naming is a dad, and we hate dads.
Yeah,
There can be no dads that are good. That's the problem.
because that is seen as game over, and that's something
Right.
that has been a shift in our culture, is the dads being seen as the buffoons,
Hmm.
and where, well, like before, they were competent, they were smart, they had
Right.
wisdom and advice to give, but now they're just idiots who hate their family
Right.
and I mean, that's the shift. The Homer Simpson characters of just like, because that's how we've seen family. Again, family is not the fundamental building block of societies anymore.
Right.
It's it's the individual. And if you have a family, you're not living up to, because having a family does take sacrifice, and it does take uh, lessening of you to increase others.
Right.
And that's like saying we need to decrease our universe to help some alien universe. Well, why would we do that? This is our world,
Hmm.
and you are your world. So why would you take from yourself to offer to somebody else?
Right.
Um, and but that's what it takes to be a husband and father, uh, and to give up on your dreams and to give up on your career ambitions or whatever is the worst thing you can do in any family or wife or whatever. Like these movies where someone, they take a job and so they have to break up, and like you know why you don't why would you let me give up on this dream, or why would you, I don't want to hold you back or
Hmm.
something, as if me getting married together is just
Right. Well,
the end
that's
of
the end.
everything. But it is, if that's, and how convenient is that, of like I don't want to jump to like a corporate cabal of conspiracy, of like, but if there were one, wouldn't it be playing out exactly how we want it? The government and big business want everybody to be little widgets in their factories and
Hmm.
offices, and don't have families, because like a wife is a potential worker,
Right.
for she's working in the home, being industrious there. No, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help the government. That doesn't help the powers that be. uh, we need her in the office. We need her in the universities. We need her in. So then it's one more moneymaker, one more,
One
you
more
know,
taxpayer.
one more taxpayer, one more income And so break up the family unit into several different pieces, and you
Mm.
just created, five, yeah, little widgets. But
And then it's why charge one person when you can charge two, and now you have the two income world. It's like, well, you both go to work. What difference does it make? You can afford it.
yeah, exactly. So everything's shaped around that. I don't want to. That's what I said. That's my tinfoil hat. But isn't it playing exactly that way? You see kind of the
Right.
results of things happening, or think, was there a design to this? Because this is benefiting someone, and it's not the people. It's not society as a whole.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think there's something to that, but whatever. That might be for another podcast. But yeah, dads can be
But
heroes.
yeah,
I think we both see our dads as people to admire, to look up to follow and emulate, and try to be like. And then villains to avoid. That's another thing that's shifted, is villains are just misunderstood now. There's no one who
right,
is, because there's no real sin. Everybody, is just good. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Everyone has good intentions,
right.
or they're just a product of their environment, or this is just a natural reaction, so we can't blame them. Or there's no agency. There's no someone deciding to do a bad thing, and
Well, it's the empathy. The empathy is literally like, and not even hear me out. It's be me. If you were me, you would do the same thing. It's like, well, that's not a good argument because we're both flawed people.
yeah, like that's something too. Like, oh well, you're an alcoholic because your dad's an alcoholic, and of course you are. Like you talk to an alcoholic, it's like, well, how did you become an alcoholic? Well, because my father was an alcoholic, and that's what I saw, and that's the example he set for me, and so of course, it's just you fall into whatever, and then but his brother could be a teetotaler,
Right.
and it's like, why are you sober? Why you don't touch alcohol? It's like, well, because my father was an alcoholic, and
Mm.
I saw the pain and it inflicted. And I mean, my mom is, and her siblings are in this situation where like they're down different paths, and they have the same dad,
Right.
and it's like, but you do have a choice. You do have uh, uh, agency and able to make your own choices and make your own decisions, good
Hmm.
decisions or bad decisions. And so it can't be, don't give me this like determinist thing of like, well, that's just the way it is because your environment or because you did whatever, like Christopher Hitchens' brother is a Christian,
Right.
they grew up in the same household as far as I know. They grew up in the same situation, and you know, it's we have choices to make. And there's good choices and there's bad choices.
But that, I mean, that defines heroes and villains too. Is what choice did you make?
Yeah.
Maybe we resent that because we don't want to be put in those situations to make those hard choices. Because I used to think, or I think it was kind of understood that heroes were admirable, like it was somebody you aspired to be like, and now they have to be relatable, or else we
Hmm.
don't like them. And like, why would you want them to be relatable? They're supposed to be above, so you have an example to look
Yeah,
at.
I'm already me. I don't
Yeah.
want, I don't want another me. What am I supposed to be doing? Well, where am I supposed to go? That's the thing too. Like the Christian circle has kind of gone into this uh, beat up men mode of like men are the problem, men
Mm,
suck, and they need to sack up and stand up and take charge and stuff. And I think a lot of men know that there's a crisis and a problem, but I was like, well, I don't know what to do. What do we do? Like,
mm,
that we were never like. That's why I hate hearing like boomers talk about this generation or whatever. And it's like,
mhm.
where were you? You were supposed to. This is the product of your teaching and guidance and leading. You know, and you talk about these snowflake, weak young men. That's your son,
Yeah.
isn't it? Don't you have any? It's your grandson, or whatever.
Mm,
What kind of responsibility do you have of raising up the next generation to keep this positive masculinity going? Or do you think it's just automatic? Maybe that's what they think, like, well, it's just what you do and now you're not doing it. It's like, well, if you don't know how to do it, I mean, yeah, like it's kind of hard to blame all these people who just
mm.
you know blame the kid for not being tough because his dad abandoned him. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, he might need a little help, and
Well,
so
there's been this thing too that I think there's like a gentleness that's taken over, that's a destructive gentleness, where like you can't toughen them up. right? We're afraid to toughen them up. I'll tell you, we had a not an argument, I want to say, but a disagreement. We had this little thing where my wife didn't like me getting on the boys for stuff, right? She thought I was too hard on them. The way she explained it was like, I don't want them to remember you as being always angry, and that's all they remember about you, is always yelling at them, always angry. And I'm like, well, they're not going to, but at the same time, like, you can't protect them from me, and you can't protect me from them. You have to let me be the heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a point where it's too heavy, right? There is a
Right.
point where you have to tell you, like, hey, now it's beyond. But
Right.
the dad has to be the one that's the heavy. And I think that was the problem, is that for a long time, dads weren't allowed to be the heavy. And so then you
Yeah.
do have these soft guys, and now it's too late. Like, no
Well,
one can be the
yeah.
heavy now.
And a lot of guys were actually abused by their fathers, you
Right.
know, and so they don't touch their kid,
Right.
you know, and it's like, well, that's too, you know, there's no, it's not like, well, I'm going to discipline them correctly. It's, well, I'm not going to discipline them at all.
Right.
And that's just as destructive,
Mm.
you know, and so like with everything, it's a context and a right way to do everything. And it takes wisdom and, you know, just patience and understanding God's way of doing things and what it means to lead, what it means to be a man, and all those things. And that leads to hopefully a hero that we
Right.
can know even the skeletons in the closet and the dark sides of, but still see repentance and
Mm.
confession of those things and think, okay, and transformation, even seeing
Right.
and saying, well, that was this person a long time ago. Like, you know, there's
Mm.
things that I find out about my parents or something and think, wow, that sucks. But it's like, well, I kind of know where they were at that time,
Right.
and that's not who they are now. And
Mm.
so I can really just say, like, if it happened today, you know, oh, whoa, that's a
Right.
crazy. But like, if say, hey, this happened, I was here in college, whatever, and this thing,
Mm.
it's like, man, it's like, but you're a different person now. And
Right.
as Christians, we believe that.
Mm.
That's it's not like, oh, once a cheater, always a cheater. Once a
Right. Right.
abuser, always an abuser. Once it's like, no, that's not actually true. Our identity has been changed.
Mm.
You were pagan. You were lost. You were not a child of God, and now you are. And that is your identity.
Mm.
And you understand that. And things are different. Such were some of you, right?
Right.
That's no longer you.
Mm.
And as Christians, we believe in that. We have I think, a responsibility to believe in that and really promote that and give people the benefit of the doubt, see change in people, and not hold them to their pasts or their, you know, not hold people to their sins that they've confessed of and that
Right.
they've repented and, you know, sought atonement for and regeneration from. So,
Well, it's that idea of the verse. It's like, and above all, love strongly, because love covers a multitude of sins. Like, there's supposed to be that love that does look over what they did before, like, because you have the love for them. And
yeah,
that's kind of lost too. That idea of, you know, honor your father and mother is kind of a dead idea. So we don't have that love for them. So we're not able to just look past the things that they did before, or even who they were and to who they are now, or who we,
yeah.
you know, we just don't have that.
You know, pointing out a hypocrisy is such a cop out.
Mm.
It's such a like, oh, I know this thing about you, so that means I don't have to listen to you.
Mm.
That means you have no authority or nothing you can say is true or, you know, worth following because I know this other thing about you. It's like, that's such a cop. You can do that with everybody. You can do that with anybody.
Right.
And anybody can do that. And anybody can do that with you,
Mm.
you know? And so that's just a stupid, there is truth, and, you know, an imperfect person can say it, you know, and it's worth following. We kind of have an advantage of there actually being a perfect person.
Right.
Right. You know, it's like, well, nobody's perfect. It's like, well, somebody was. And we can follow him. And he's said a lot, and we have a lot written about him. And we can follow that. And that's the way to go, and just see how he did things, and just do our best to follow that. And what he said about things, and those things are true. And so we can actually put that on a pedestal,
Right.
you know, and follow that. But only Christ.
Maybe
you
that's
know?
what we've secularly called heroism, is those moments where, like, the man intersects with what he's supposed to be in Christ. You know,
Yeah.
when you see that overlap and you see that character shine through, it's like that was a heroic moment. Because that's the idea with David too. Like, when he stood up to Philistines for the people of God, it was like, oh, that was a heroic moment. Not when he was sinning, but that was the man. That was just him, So, yeah, I mean, maybe that is heroism. Christ likeness is heroic.
Yeah. Well, that's a good place to land on this. As far as hero worship, I mean, we can worship the hero, Christ. That's it. Don't worship anybody else. Worshiping and idolizing of anybody else is not good. We're all in the trenches fighting sin. We're all there. We should have understanding of that. Yes, take wisdom. Yes, to see what's true. But reading the Bible is how we know it's true. So if anybody's saying something against that, don't take that. It's not the person. It's what they're saying is just not biblically true. So we can reject that. Follow Christ, fighting sin, stay on your mission and what you're trying to do, and grow and try to be that for other people. Accept discipleship, disciple other people, have humility, and be a leader, and just stay on track.
That's good. One last thing. Speaking of heroes, did you see the Superman trailer, the teaser?
Yeah, I can't wait to not see that.
Because it looks bad, or because you don't need another superhero movie?
Because I don't need another superhero movie. I haven't watched a superhero movie or show in years.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat, honestly.
I haven't seen Justice League.
I haven't either.
I haven't seen Superman and Batman.
No, I haven't seen any of them.
I haven't seen The Flash. I haven't seen anything. Daredevil. I've never seen anything. I do not.
It got me a little bit because crypto was in it. Ugh. So I was like, are we going Golden Age? What are we doing? This is weird, but I don't know.
I don't know. It's just
you're tuckered out. You don't need any more.
Tuckered out. I can't. The Avengers movies. I'm just not like. I'm just watching the same movie over and over again.
Honestly,
and I can only see Uncle Ben die so many times.
Well, that's why the comics will always be better than the movies, because they can tell different stories. You don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll still read comics. I mean, that's working at a comic book store has ruined like that part of it. As far as like, it's like working at a pizza place. You kind of hate pizza. You either end up hating pizza, or your taste for pizza
it's elevated.
Your standards have kind of changed. Like what's good, and
right.
What's catching the sales, and like what's the cover art, and like what's actually who the writers and artists are. It's like, okay, that's what you start looking for instead of titles. Oh, it's new Superman.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the new Tom King, but whatever. It's like the names and stuff a little bit more. Your taste gets a little bit more refined in that way, so that's fine. But yeah, I'm just over the movie stuff. I haven't even seen any movies. I don't even watch any movies, honestly. Like,
oh man,
the last movie I saw in theater was Oppenheimer.
No, I will recommend one movie that I saw recently called Adopt a Highway. And it kind of feeds off what we're talking about here. It's no, dude, it's so good. It's Ethan Hawke. He plays this guy who just got out of jail after 25 years on a third strike, and he went in when he was like 19 years old. So he's been in jail for that long. He gets out, and the whole story moves along because he's trying to put his life back together, and he finds a baby in a dumpster. And that kind of sets his whole events in motion. And the whole movie's about like second chances and stuff like that. Because
he sees it as Down syndrome and he leaves it.
Yeah, he puts it back in. He's like, "Good, you belong here."
That's our hero.
Well, it's crazy because when he opens up the bag and the baby's in a duffel bag, it has a little tag and it says her name was Ella. Like the mom put her there, like that was her name. Like she's gonna be dead. And then it's the whole idea of like he brings her out and she gets a second chance of life, and it's his, it's whatever.
That's just a form of abortion that'll be legal in
Yeah, now it's like this guy just got in the way. What is he? He's the villain.
Yeah, it's another mouth the government has to feed. Thank you, Ethan Hawke.
Thanks, Ethan Hawke.
No, he's a hero. See, they can't help but write a movie like that.
Yeah, exactly.
They know that's heroic.
That's what I'm saying.
They don't believe anything they're actually saying. They say all this stuff because it's the culture or whatever, but they don't mean it. It's so. All the people who are most like pro-trans and gay are all straight white women who are married and have kids and living their trad life, but they feel bad about it that they got it, and the little blue hair girl isn't, and so they're just okay, I'll buy some gay stuff at Target for you.
Oh God,
and that's the demographic for that.
And they'd actually be horrified if it was one of their kids. If one of their kids comes home and is like, I think I'm supposed to be a girl, then it's the end of it.
Or no, that's like the goal. That's like, oh,
Oh.
thank you, God, yes.
I don't know
I'm
if
so
that's
much more interesting now.
maybe when they're 5 or 6 and it's still kind of like you can pass it off as cute, but not when they're 16, 17 and they've got a 5 o'clock shadow and a tutu.
I think the problem is these rich, liberal, straight white women. They're the bleeding hearts that just gush for that crap. That's what is promoting that stuff. It's not actually even the minority groups. It's the advocates and the allies for the minority groups.
The uninteresting, bored, unoccupied.
Yeah, it makes their life interesting. I mean, somebody just came out and said that Basinger, some actress
I
has
saw
been.
that.
She out and said that. She's like, all 3 of my kids are trans. She's like, and it makes my life so much more interesting. And it's like, yeah, that's all you care about. You don't want to be the boring, cis woman, whatever. You want to be the mother of a trans kid because now you're special and now you're, more interesting.
I want to be boring. I want to the most boring.
That's the revolution. Just be
That's
freaking normal.
honestly
Just
be as normal as possible.
Be Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews is my spirit animal. Just be freaking normal. It's okay.
All right. So, until next week, just go be freaking normal. Just do that. Rebel through normalcy.
Yes.
Until next week, we'll see you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.